removing the third row on my 2011 Ford Flex Titanium. They're power seats. You have no choice but to remove the side panels to get at the two bolts that are holding this giant bar, swivel bar on this side, and giant swivel bar on this side. You could probably cut holes into your panel if you wanted to destroy them, but for the hour work of taking off the little plastic clips, it's not really worth it in my opinion. You have two bolts here, 9/32. Just pull this out of the way when you want to unscrew this one. There's no need to remove the strut. Two plastic clips, they both unscrew. One there and one down there. Same thing on this side, right? You can have your four, and then you're gonna need to get this guy up. There's two little pull tabs, one pull tab in that corner, one pull tab in that corner. So to get the back off, you're kind of left with this. You're left with the 4 bolts. Again, I found a 9/32 socket works for those. These ones just unscrew. For whatever reason, this one has a male part, so that one came from down here underneath there. And these ones just pull up. So that will get your back part ready to remove the panels. There's really just those two clips holding this guy down. I was gonna take some brute force to pull it up. Don't forget to lift these up. That was part of my problem. Cost me a few minutes to figure that out, but it just does pull up. So there's nothing fancy there. It's just got some clips that are holding it in place. So I wanted to take this chance to point something out to you. Mine has the upgraded sound system because it's the titanium, so it does have speakers. So don't go ahead and remove these completely. They just pull down. They're clipped in there, so it takes a bit of wiggling. You can get them out, because at the end of the day, I just need to get these guys loose enough to get at those bolts for there, because there's 2 bolts on this side. There's 2 bolts on this side, not the seatbelt bolt. I'm not removing my seat belts. Again, I just want to get the panels loose. I don't want to remove everything. So once you remove those 4 bolts on that side, and there's actually 2 bolts on this side and 2 bolts on that side, which I think you can get at much easier if you turn this to either fold or tailgate mode. Let's go to tailgate. All right, I'll see what's going on this side. There you go. Right, so this big pivot pointer support is held in by 2 bolts on this side, 1 and 2. So I'll get those off and tell you what they use. There's some electrical connectors under here. I'll get to unplugging those. And we'll carry on to try to loosen these enough to actually get at the 2 bolts. But really, at the end of the day, there's only 4 bolts that are the seat is pivoting on, and these 2 front ones are easy to get at without removing anything. So it's a very poor design on Ford's part to make you remove a bunch of plastic pieces to get at 4 bolts. I'll keep going. Now that we got the back unclipped, you're gonna have to come to the forward here, driver's side. This just pulls up. Get yourself a little pry tool, pull it up, because there is one little teeny tiny 7/32 bolt here that we need to undo so we can get this part of the plastic piece loose. Now that this is out, I'm gonna come up the side here, and you'll see there's another little panel here. So use your pry tool to pop that open, and we'll get the bolt out from underneath that. You'll find another 9/32 in there that you'll need an extension for, because it's really deep in there. Coming over to the passenger side, right, so you lift this guy up. You have your 7/32 bolt there. The one difference on this side, if you have a power seat, like I do for the second row, is this just clips out. You have to get this piece off, and then your 7/32 way at the top here as well. When you remove this guy, it just does unclip. I used my little pry tool for it. It does have electrical connection in the back. There does seem to be a lot of slack. So for now, I'm not going to disconnect it. I'm going to leave it attached, because again, when I goal is just to get this guy loose. I wanted to show you how these came out because they were a bit of a struggle. They have 4 clips. So it's a matter of getting these giant clips out and then pulling it down because it kind of fits up underneath like this. You have to pull out to a certain point and then start pulling down and pulling out. There is only one screw, or one bolt, I'm sorry, that holds it in. Same thing on the other side. They are a lot of effort though to get them out. No need to take out the seatbelt though. If you have power seats, now is a good time to put them up to fold mode because at some point you're going to unbolt them and they're powered, so they're not like the manual ones that you'll be able to move around easily later. So find the position you want them in for your storage. All right, so I knew it was just a matter of time, but yep, broke a piece. So trying to pull up to get this unclipped and snapped it right here. So be careful with this piece, which is why I would not recommend this job on a new Ford Flex. This one's 11 years old and 200,000 miles. Really don't care about it too much more, which is why I want to get rid of the rear seat to make it more versatile. When I get to the point where I can show you where the bolts are that hold this guy back, because again, there's 2 bolts here, 2 bolts there, and then 2 on each side, so really only 6 bolts and some simple electrical connectors holding this 3rd row in. You know, you're probably, again, if you don't care about the car too much, just as easy to cut an access panel to undo those rear bolts, because this one's not bad, it's not in a noticeable spot, but obviously any nice panels there, if you busted it right in half, you're not going to be very happy. In prying this back piece off, did discover, which I didn't know before, this is just on there through clips, there's no bolts or anything. There's an electrical connector, so when you're back here removing or loosening off this guy, you might as well pull this out as well, because you'll need to get this piece loose. Super important. When you lift this up to take this bolt out, right, you can do that. This just comes out, take that bolt out. Go find your seat belt, this one here, and it's a T50, so make sure you get that ahead of time, because I found it actually holds this bottom piece down. I broke my piece pulling on it to try to get it unclipped. Not terrible, because once I bolt this back in, yes, there'll be a line there, it won't be the best, but that's why, because it's holding the bottom of this down. So do that on both sides before you try to pry it up. Super important, guys. So I finally got this piece pretty loose. There is a pull-up tab you can get for this seat belt anchor as well. It doesn't look like it's attached, and it should be able to slide up and down. Challenge I'm having now is, right, I need to get to the bolts that are kind of hiding in here. So I think now is a good time to fold up the seats. Okay, I'd open the driver's door and close it again. Probably one of those jobs where you don't want to disconnect your battery if you have power seats, just because you're going to be folding them up and down. And let's see if this helps me at all. Probably not. Okay, at some point I'm going to have to admit defeat in terms of trying to get this off without taking more stuff off than I needed. These back guys have a speaker which has a little clip. Undo the clip. So on this side here, you'll see really the only thing holding it to the car is that clip. Undo that clip, then it falls down. This one has a couple clips. Undo those, and finally take off the cover, undo the bolt, because there's really no way to get at those 2 bolts down there unless this is way up and out of the way. Okay, that nut is off that bolt. I undid the connectors. There's 2 connectors in here for my power rear seat. Speaker connector. I'm going to see if I can make it without undoing that seat bolt piece. So now, see if we can slide this up and that will be enough. Okay, I finally got this loose enough to actually see what's going on back here. And this giant metal monstrosity is part of the rear pivot. So it looks like the electrical connector for the motor. I need to disconnect those two bolts I was talking about. But more interesting is the fact that the seat belt anchor for the rear third row is mounted to the pivot. So you do in fact need to remove that to get it out of your car. So I'll do that now. And if you wanted to actually cut an access panel to do this without removing half your car, just know that it kind of extends from where your seatbelt anchor hole is, right? Because your seatbelt is anchored to the front of it to just behind the hole for your luggage mount, which is on this side. And then here's your pivot hole. So literally if you cut, you know, from here around here and then down, make a nice big loop, you could get it in and out. I don't know, it depends on how often you're going to take your rear seat in and out. The fact that it's in the third row and near the floor, you're not going to notice it. I can tell you that much. With the seats up, you don't even see that part. So after I get this seat out, I'll investigate doing that, because I'm not going to take this panel off again, ever. It's hour and 15 minutes in, broke a piece learning, so I do hope this video helps somebody else. Thought maybe I would jump to the end and then go back to the beginning, if that makes sense. Removing the third row on a 2011 Ford Flex Titanium with power seats, an hour and a half into it, and on the schematics, it's like, okay, it's 4 bolts. That's dumb, Ford. Why did you make it so difficult to remove this third row? Well, this whole big giant metal contraption here, right behind the access panel, that you need to get off to remove the third row. It's where the 2 bolts are, right? One here, one there. There's an electrical connector, which has a little tab on it that you can remove, and that's for the power seat. And then this hole is for the seat belt mount. So your seat belt is mounting to this giant metal contraption they have built here. So it is not designed, and then your luggage bolt as well is definitely not designed for easy in and out. All that said, they could have obviously built a plastic clip in and out access panel in case you needed to remove them, such as I'm doing. But I wanted to warn you in advance that even when you get it out, it's going to be a long process to put it back in without cutting a big hole in your access panel, which you can do, because there is, this loop is for the swivel, and this part is for, I guess actually that's for your seat belt, and that one's for your luggage rack back there. So I will investigate cutting a giant hole in this, which, I mean, if you use black duct tape to kind of put it on temporarily, and it's a really old vehicle and you don't care, then it allows you to at least get it in and out. But that's why it takes so long, and that's why they don't come out easily, even though there's only 2 bolts per side holding it in. All right, so I got my 2 bolts off, these big giant suckers here. Right, and now you can see that it's loose. I have to do 2 bolts at the front here holding it in. So I wanted to point out, and upon investigation at this, like just staring at it for so long, is if you're willing to kind of sacrifice your luggage and tie down, which I gotta admit I've never used in the 11 years I've owned this car, it makes it pretty flush, meaning if you look at the back of your panel here, right, this is actually for your seat belt, and it comes with an access panel that pops out, so it just pops in there and fills in that hole. This is already cut out for this part. This kind of leaves you the extension to here. And again, if you took this off, it would basically just come to the bottom. So I'm pretty convinced that if you just cut along here, right, around this corner, like make a big cut like this. Sorry, I'll back up here. If you cut this, you could definitely get this chair in and out, and then you just mount back and put your seatbelt back on there. So which would leave you 3 bolts on each side, the 2 bolts on the front, so 5, so 10 bolts without having to remove any access panel. Of course, you do have a cut in your back. Sure, there's a lot of ways to make it look nice. The red-green simple method is to use black duct tape. So, you know, if you cut it neatly, you can just duct tape that thing back on there. So that is an interesting mod that I might look at, because I think I might want to put my chairs back in someday. So now that I have the 2 bolts holding the pivot and the motor in place, you come to the front, right? You want to remove this, but you don't need to do that now, because if you look at the side, right, it just comes out. So your chair is not actually attached to this metal guy. And there's only 2 bolts on there. So again, we can remove it later, or if you plan on putting your chair back in anytime soon, especially if you do the cut in the whole side modification, then you may want to leave those on there. I'm going to remove them. I really still don't know what this is. I'm going to unplug it and probably relocate it to the side of the over here somewhere, since there seems to be room to mount it there. Okay, I got the seat out. For the power seat, you're going to be left with a big wiring harness, a bigger one on the passenger side. Once your power seat is out, you're going to be left with a wiring harness, a bigger one on the passenger side, and a smaller one on the driver's side, because on the bottom of the seat is the controls for the multi-position power seat. So if you do plan on being able to put this back in easily, I suggest you kind of tuck it maybe into here for this one, and that one down by the mounting bolts, so that you can get at it easily without taking off your whole panel again. So you want to remove your 3rd row in your Ford Flex. This is a 2011 Ford Flex Titanium EcoBoost. That's 10 years old now, 200,000 clicks, not using the back seat. It's a full day project. You're left with a nice wheel well, some luggage things. These can be taken out. Unfortunately, these are a problem. So I'm gonna have to come up with some way to cover them, because having them sticking up there is gonna be a potential grabbing hazard and scratching hazard. But you do get back quite a bit of space at the end of the day. In my case, it was an electric powered chair. And there's a mechanism on the side. And the thing weighs a ton. It's probably a good 110 pounds. So you'll be saving some weight once you get it out, and a lot of space, but you're not going to be taking it in and out very frequently, if ever again, because again, it's a full day to a half day job.